So President Trump just drew a red line. Iran must start allowing ships through the Strait of Hormuz, or we're going to hit their oil infrastructure, a move that would immediately send shockwaves through the global economy. Now, personally, I don't think Iran is even slightly considering opening the strait voluntarily, which is why President Trump last night ordered a significant military strike on Kharg Island. Now, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is a strategic advantage, one of the few, if not the only, strategic advantage that Iran has over the United States and our Gulf allies. So I think it's going to take a lot more than even last night's significant raid to get Iran to give that up. Now, U.S. Central Command put out a note saying last night U.S. forces executed a large-scale precision strike on Kharg Island. The strike destroyed naval mine storage facilities, missile storage bunkers, and multiple other military sites. And this is footage from those strikes that I'm playing here. They say the U.S. forces successfully struck more than 90 Iranian military targets on the island while preserving oil infrastructure. And to give you an idea of where this is located, we've got our fancy Google Earth here. Zooming in to Iran here in the northern portion of the screen. This is the Strait of Hormuz right here. This little elbow bend, so very narrow, and you can see that ships would need to slow down to be able to make that turn. Very vulnerable if Iran wanted to keep this closed, as they have right now. There's a couple of Iranian ships went through earlier today, a couple Indian ships. Iranian ships are still making the transit, but everyone else is clogged up on both sides, not moving through. Kharg Island is in the northern portion of the Persian Gulf up here. So Kharg, prior to this conflict, roughly 90% of Iran's oil exports moved through this island, through a storage facility here. So it's critical. It's a strategic aspect of the Iranian economy and of the Iranian oil economy specifically. That's what the United States hit last night. The argument now being, is that more important to Iran than the advantage they have by closing the Strait of Hormuz? President Trump, when addressing the strike last night, said, quote, "Our weapons are the most powerful and sophisticated that the world has ever known, but for reasons of decency, I have chosen not to wipe out oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision." Hard to tell as of this morning if anything has changed. From what I can see, no ships have taken that on and said, well, I guess we're going to go for it. And from Iran, there's not been any official statements about the opening of the strait or that they are no longer going to be targeting commercial vessels. So as we sit here recording right now, it seems like no change at all. But that is the red line that President Trump laid out. Open the Strait of Hormuz, or else we're going after your oil infrastructure. That hasn't really happened so far. Israel a couple days ago carried out pretty significant strikes against some storage facilities and refining facilities in Iran. But the large-scale destruction of the Iranian oil infrastructure would be a significant event for the global economy. A lot of what we've seen right now have been disruptions, short to medium-term disruptions. When we start wiping their oil infrastructure off the face of the map, you're talking about very long-term, significant repercussions. Now, President Trump says Iran has no ability to defend anything that we want to attack. There is nothing they can do about it. Iran's military and all others involved with this terrorist regime would be wise to lay down their arms and surrender now. And that seems to be the approach that we're hearing from President Trump in recent days is do this thing or else we're going to bomb you harder. And this is where we get into, I just don't know if threatening to bomb Iran harder is going to get them to back down. They are already in a corner. From day one, they were backed into a corner. The United States and Israel, in the opening wave of strikes, killed a significant number of their leadership. I'm not sure they're worried about being bombed even more. Again, with this strategic advantage they have in the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, the only response we have from Iran at this point is saying that they're going after ports, docks, and hidden American locations inside the United Arab Emirates. In fact, they published a notification warning Emiratis and civilians at the Mina Jabal Ali port, the Khalifa port, and the Minas Al Fujairah port, excuse my pronunciation on those, to exit those areas, suggesting that they're going to come under significant fire later today. And that is one other consideration when we talk about the United States going after Kharg Island. We say CENTCOM and the president all says military infrastructure was the only thing that was hit. Iran is already presenting that as civilian infrastructure, oil infrastructure, and they are responding in kind, going after civilian and oil infrastructure. Now, in fairness, Iran's going to say what Iran's going to say, so I'm not sure how much we should take that into consideration, but just recognize that's the direction this is continuing to go. Iran's advantage that they have is their seeming, they don't care about going after oil refineries and hammering their Gulf partners on some of those more soft locations rather than U.S. military bases. Now, in terms of what this could mean and how this could play out, James Acton put together what I think was a good summary here. He's a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment. He referred to this as compellence, saying Trump hopes the threat to strike oil facilities will coerce Iran into reopening the Strait seems unlikely to work. That's James's assessment. I think it's pretty spot on. He says, most fundamentally, Iran's theory of victory is almost certainly to block the Strait and force oil prices to rise, and it's working. Destruction of the oil facilities on Kharg is a huge blow to Iran, but keeping the Strait blocked is almost certainly more valuable. After all, this is a war of regime change. It's literally existential for the Iranian regime. To win, it has to inflict sufficient costs on the United States and Israel that it doesn't attempt something similar to this in the future. The value of achieving that goal to Tehran is significantly greater than the value of the oil infrastructure on Kharg. I think they're probably right, and this would speak to why the Strait was shut down immediately. When we talked about this in the lead up to the conflict, this is kind of the nuclear option, no pun intended. And for Iran to go there right out the gate means that they really were viewing this as a regime change conflict. So, the status of the Iranian economy is probably not the top, second, or maybe even third consideration of the senior officials making these decisions right now. It's their survival. They'll deal with the economic repercussions later. If the regime survives, that's something they'll have to deal with. Now, in yesterday's video, we talked about what the roughly 2,200 Marines heading to the Middle East, set to arrive in the next week or two, could be doing when they get there. One of those now getting more attention is the idea that Marines could be used to take over Kharg Island. I think that's very unlikely for a couple of reasons. It's still a pretty significant operation to get the Marines in there, to take it and to hold it. And there's just no real value in doing that. Like, yes, technically, maybe on a piece of paper, you could say now we have all of the Iranian oil exports, but holding that island right off the coast of Iran, I mean, not quite in small arms range, but certainly in small drone and short range rocket range, would be very challenging to keep that open, and we just don't accomplish very much doing that. Iran would probably just stop shipping oil rather than ship it through a U.S. held facility. I did hear a pretty good assessment yesterday that Torsten Heinrich and Sal over at What's Going On in Shipping shot me a note and said, hey, I think those Marines are probably going to be used for seizing Iranian oil vessels that do make it through the Strait of Hormuz. And I think they're probably pretty accurate with that. So I'll stick with the likelihood that they're reinforcing bases in the Middle East, a couple areas, specifically Iraq, maybe Syria, but also keep an eye out for them to be used to seize some of those Iranian ships that are making it through the Strait, try to exert a little more pressure on Iran to actually open this corridor. Now, wrapping up here with James Acton, he says the U.S. faces two credibility challenges. First, given Iranian oil is reaching the international market, destroying the facilities on Kharg will put upwards pressure on oil prices, which is clearly not in Trump's interest. Tehran may gamble, therefore, that if it keeps the Strait closed, the United States won't follow through on its threat. This is the challenge anytime we draw a red line. And it's interesting to see a couple times that Trump has drawn these red lines. I mean, remember, one is with the protesters, and we just kind of came and went with that one. You could argue that this is now a part of that, but I should mention that nobody in the administration and the president himself has not been talking about doing this because of the protesters. But they often look back at the Obama administration, the red lines in Syria, and say, what a mess, what a problem. We telegraphed what we were going to do, and then we didn't follow through on it, so we lost so much credibility. We're putting ourselves in that situation again here. It's not a crazy gamble for Iran to say, all right, hit the oil infrastructure. You're going to be the bad guys. The whole world is going to look at the United States and say, why are you the ones making this even worse? And we have heard a lot in the administration in recent weeks of short-term pain for long-term gain. But I think there's a limit to that, right? I don't know how much the gas price here in the United States would have to go up before that argument doesn't carry as much weight or doesn't have anywhere near the same degree of support. Acton, wrapping up here, says, finally, for compellence to work, Tehran must believe that if it reopens the Strait, the U.S. will not attack oil infrastructure. But if Tehran judges Trump's threats as credible, it's quite likely they'll conclude he'll go after the oil infrastructure anyways. Again, we talked about this in a couple of videos. We seem to be getting further and further in here with no clear end state and no clear way to step back without ceding some demands possibly to Iran. So from Iran's perspective right now, if they say we unblock the Strait, we lose our strategic advantage. If we don't unblock the Strait, you hit our oil infrastructure. If they are considering that Trump is probably going to continue to go after more and more targets no matter what, I mean, what's the next thing, right? This is the Strait. Maybe next it's give up all your nuclear material or we hit your oil infrastructure. Give up all of your missile production sites or we hit your oil infrastructure. Hold democratic elections or we hit your oil infrastructure. So if they believe that Trump is going to do that anyways or threaten that down the road anyways, which seems likely at this point, right? They're less likely to go along with that now and view it as really a credible, immediate threat. So in a lot of ways, we just laid out a pretty significant red line that we will know, I mean, within the next few hours, certainly within the next day, if Iran is taking that seriously and if that's going to be an option for the United States to force open the Strait of Hormuz. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.